Simple, joyful mama, that's who I am. Living, loving, doing all I can. Join the fun.
Welcome back to another episode of Spend Some Time with Me in the Kitchen. Remember, I mentioned last week that I cannot follow recipes to save my life? Well, yeah. Here's a flop recipe that happened. I made a double batch of the sourdough sandwich bread and it over fermented. Because, of course, I didn't start with fed starter. I started with very, very hungry starter. So it just, it just really over fermented. But I made it work out. And I guess that's just kind of the thing I want to show on my channel is that when things go south, you can fix it. So my double batch of sourdough bread that just completely over fermented, I still baked it, but I baked it on the sheet pan. I laid down parchment paper on my sheet pan and then I put the over fermented dough on it and I let it stand a little bit longer because at this point it was in the fridge overnight because it was just so goopy I could not hold it. But at least after being in the fridge overnight, it was a little bit more pliable. Anyways, that's all to say that I baked it and the bread was just so it was very, very dense. And the only logical thing to do is to make croutons. I don't need to give you the rundown of how to make croutons, but just in case, don't forget to use oil, spices of any flavor that you like. Bake at 425, turning the croutons over every 10 to 15 minutes to give it that beautiful brown color all around. Store it in a dry container or jar for up to a month. And of course, I'm already using the croutons. I made this soup for lunch and we're adding croutons. My kids were going to pick it out of my bowl. No thanks. So I've had this milk sitting in my fridge for maybe a little bit too long than I should admit. And the only logical thing to do is to make farmer's cheese, or in Russian, we call it tvorog. I'm pretty sure this episode is turning into things that are not edible, make them edible again. If you've never had farmer's cheese, it's very similar to cottage cheese. It's so similar, but it's so different. You mix milk and sour cream and let it ferment. 12 to 24 hours on counter will do. Came to my farmer's cheese the next day and now became like this sour cream. I haven't tried it at this stage. I can't lie. I wouldn't try it. But it's essentially sour cream. Bake it and then you need to cool it off completely. I, however, do not follow my own recipes. And I, however, rush things. So it was a whoopsie. But I mean, clearly it still works. It's just advise you to just let it cool. It actually becomes a much better consistency, in my opinion, if it cools fully, especially if you just keep it in the oven, in the hot oven for overnight again. So what I'm saying is bake it, turn off the oven, keep the farmer's cheese in the oven. Just keep it closed, let it cool off the entire night or the entire day, and then go ahead and strain it. It's so much easier. Just trust me. Clearly, I don't follow my own advice, but I advise you to listen to my advice. Now, to strain it. Some people will strain it in a cheesecloth and hang it. I think that's too much. Personally, I just do it in a colander. This yellow stuff is whey. You can use it in smoothies or baking, whatever you want. Now your cottage cheese / farmer's cheese is ready for use. You can literally just eat it as it is, or you can bake with it. I am making Syrniki. It's a Russian delicacy that I grew up eating. If you've never had it before, it's very similar to a cream cheese pancake. I will leave a detailed recipe in the description below, but essentially you take your farmer's cheese, you add an egg. I use cream of wheat as my starch, but I didn't have enough cream of wheat. I needed 1 more tablespoon, so I'm adding 1 tablespoon of flour as well. Vanilla, pinch of salt, sugar, and then you mix it all well. I'm using just a regular spoon just to combine it all. Now to the fun part. We get to shaping our little cottage cheese pancakes. Place 2 tablespoons of flour on a plate or some sort of board. Get a tablespoon of dough and roll it into a ball. Once you've got it in a little ball, you put it on your flour and you will squish it together to give it that puck shape. Now using the side of your hands, turn it a couple of times to give it that perfect puck shape. Honestly, I know I said I don't do anything hard. I don't think this is a hard recipe. So that's why I'm doing it. I think it's really fun. It goes by so fast. You get really big dollops of dough. So out of this portion, I think I make about 12 Syrniki. I'm not sure. You'd have to look at the end. But um it goes by so quickly. So this is a sped up version. But honestly, I had it all done less than 5 minutes. I know I mentioned that you can eat tvorog or farmer's cheese as it is without like cooking it. If you've never had it before, you should definitely give it a try. You can add different flavorings to it, such as maple syrup, honey, nuts, raisins. The way we grew up eating it is my mom would add a dollop of sour cream or yogurt to farmer's cheese and then add honey, raisin. You mix it all and serve it as a pudding or as yogurt. It's the perfect sweet, high protein dessert, but it can be a breakfast, it can be a snack, it can be a lunch. It's amazing. Now I need to fry the Syrniki. My kids love Syrniki. Again, who doesn't love a sweet cheese pancake? To my hot preheated pan, I add about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of oil. And you just go ahead and ploppity plop all of those Syrniki onto the pan. Be careful not to splash. But even if things miss the pan, we keep moving forward. Now we just fry these pancakes on each side for 3 to 5 minutes. Honestly, super quick. You want it to have that beautiful golden brown color. You flip it over. Don't get distracted like I do, but that's okay. We keep moving forward. In my opinion, these are served best chilled. Do not start eating them right away because they are still soft inside. They're very similar to cheesecake. You need to let it cool, you need to let it set. So if you bite into it right away, you might be disappointed by this like weird, wet, gooey texture. Let them cool on the counter, then let them sit in the fridge, and you can serve it with a dollop of sour cream or jam. And in that green bowl is all the farmer's cheese that's left that we can just eat. Also, does anyone else have spider monkeys living in their house, or is it just me? And to my most favorite thing to make, again, some might think this is hard. I love making crepes. My kids love eating crepes. I'm making whey crepes. The recipe that I use uses quite a bit of milk, so I love using leftover whey for making these crepes. It gives it such perfect sour taste. It's amazing. You have to try it. So to begin with, I'm going to strain my whey so that way there's not a lot of farmer's cheese left in it. I did it just through a sieve. Mix eggs and sugar. Add your liquid, whether it's milk or whey. Don't add all of the liquid at first. You want to incorporate your flour into your batter when there's not that much liquid because it's easier to get rid of the flour clumps and lumps. If the texture is too dry, add a little bit of whey or milk and continue mixing your batter by hand. Now, to the stiff batter concoction, we will add vanilla, but that's optional, and oil, which is not optional. You have to add the oil. Once all of that is incorporated and mixed well, add the rest of your liquid. This batter is super liquidy, but trust the process. If you can, let your batter rest for about 10 minutes before using it for your crepes. At this point, I usually end up doing some cleanup work, preheating the pan, things like that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the shot, but what I do with my first crepe is I preheat the pan really hot. I add a tablespoon neutral oil, like avocado oil, and then with the paper towel, I go ahead and wipe it off so there's not like oil on the pan. Again, some might put making crepes into the hard category. For me, it's so therapeutic because it's just the same process and you just stand there. I oftentimes do it in the evening when my kids are down to bed because it's just kind of relaxing. As you can see, I'm only using one pan. These crepes are so thin and they just cook so quickly. I ladle less than 1/4 cup onto my pan and swish and swash the batter around to make it go to all sides. If you've never made crepes before, there is a bit of a learning curve, but once you figure it out, so rewarding. When I ladle the batter onto my pan, it takes less than 15 to 20 seconds for the sides to start browning. At that point, you need to use a spatula or something like that. I'm using a rubber spatula to pick on one side. Once you've got that side lifted, you flip it over. Sometimes you might burn yourself, but that just comes with being a homemaker. I don't know. I love my battle scars from the kitchen. As I said previously, oftentimes I'll make these crepes in the evening and I will just cover them with plastic wrap until morning and leave it on the counter for my kids to have for breakfast. This is where farmer's cheese comes in again. You can actually stuff these crepes with farmer's cheese. Mix that farmer's cheese with some honey or sugar, incorporate it well into like a paste. Get your crepe, smear some of that farmer's cheese on top. You can roll it into a little tube or just fold it over and enjoy. I'm taking these grapes as well as some jelly to our friend's house. Thank you for spending time with me in the kitchen today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment or a like or subscribe. I would love to connect with you. Now, bye.